Hello, it's Frank again. I've got another one of my fantastically kind people that is helping me through my probably midlife crisis of doing this project called The Stories of Our Lives. And I'm here with Nicola Lutz-Collier today, who is going to hopefully speak to me and tell me her story, a little fragment of it anyway. Yeah, this is my ongoing project of trying to connect people by showing us all that no matter what we believe, we're all kind of made of stories, and stories are a little bit true, but they're a little bit made up. And I think it's probably a good thing to notice that. So on that note, hello, Nicola.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to have a chat. One of the things that I've been saying, you know, when I do these chats with people, is that it made me think about my relationships with different people. It's made me think about, you know, how I'm connected to every person I speak to, and then just made me think about the nature of relationships anyway. And then maybe you could go on and talk about social media, but you know, I've thought about my connection with family members and friends, and then the people, you know, like yourself, that I'm acquainted with but I don't really know. That's a whole different dynamic. And you know, you were really kind a few weeks ago and came on a webinar that I did, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I kind of have a little bit of a grasp of what I'm doing now, but I really had no clue. And you were wonderful because you sat like through it as I rambled on, and you had this kind of really nice smile on your face, which was like, you know, go on, you're all right, you're okay, which was really lovely.
They're okay.
But you know what, I don't know anything really other than that. Kerry's talked about, you know, we've both talked since our kids are older about meeting people, you know, who have a spark, you know what I mean, who have something, a little bit of dynamism about them. I love the word vivacity, do you know what I mean? And you seem to have that, even though I don't know what it consists of.
Oh,
with that little preamble, can you talk into that a little bit? Does that, when you hear that, does that resonate with you? Does that say anything to you?
It is something that people say to me, and I don't really think much about, because I'm very lucky if I have a good life and I enjoy it, and that's the way I was brought up. So I think you look on the bright side, and everyone's got a spark. I think actually, I think everyone can be vivacious. It just depends which situation they're in. So I'm in situations that I find invigorating, and with people that I enjoy, and I tend to steer clear of situations and people that I don't enjoy. So perhaps that's right on the people that I don't spark with, but the people that I do spark with, I like to spend time with, and that's what gives me a bit of joy.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? There's two things there I pick up straight away. You know, one of the reasons that I grew up in a pub, and I think at an early age, I was listening to lots of different people, you know, tell their stories. And I'm fascinated. I mean, I have a real high tolerance for anybody telling their story, and people seem to gravitate towards me, and there'll be times when even I'm like, you know, I'm not in the mood for it, but they'll say something, and I'm just like, wow, this person's trying to talk to me. This person's trying to make a connection, and I'm just shutting them down. And it's like, okay, listen, actively listen to them. And it's like, everybody, you know, you said everybody's got a spark. Everybody's got a story to tell. Everybody has it if we're prepared to listen to it. You know what I mean? And the other thing you said, which is really interesting, was and I've heard the phrase "misery loves company" quite a lot lately. Different people saying, you know, that, and it's kind of sticking in my head a little bit. And it's kind of misery loves company, and that idea that, you know, it's when you start telling negative stories, you know, it kind of almost, you get into an agreement that everything's a bit crap, so you all start telling negative stories. You're in this kind of like the world's going to hell in a handcart kind of thing, you know. So it's really interesting that what you said there is another one of those, you know, ideas that, you know, if you can get around positive stories, it's just a good way of seeing the world, I think, you know.
Definitely, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So as we go through, we'll kind of like, hopefully we'll kind of get to, you know, we'll get some insight into who you are. But one of the things I'm really interested in, I mean, I have a childishly innocent way with people where I love accents. I'm fascinated by accents. So if someone's got an accent that's slightly different, I'm like, okay, where are you from? How did you get here? You know what I mean? And I'm also fascinated by names. You know, if I see a name, I can't try and place it, and then, you know, I kind of think, oh, that name's got history. You know what I mean? That name's got some history in it, whatever it is. And I love your name. So it's Lutz-Collier.
Yes, well,
So
being
can you talk about that a bit?
Lutz-Collier, because
It's Lutz.
well, we say Lutz, but it's German.
Lutz.
Actually, it is Lutz. You can pronounce it correctly, but I've always
Okay, yeah.
and the
Lutz, yeah.
my marriage bit, though I'm no longer married, I kept that part of my name because my children have the same name, so I didn't
God.
drop the hyphen Collier. Professionally, I'm just known as Nicola Lutz, and so that's just remained with me. It's quite an unusual name. I like the
It
fact that it's
is.
a family name, and it's an unusual name in the UK. It's quite often used as a first name in Germanic countries. And I think
Right. And do you
something like that.
yeah, and do you know, is that kind of, is it on your mother's side or father's side? Is it, how does it,
Yeah, it's on my father's side. We've tried to trace it, actually. Well, I haven't
right.
tried to trace it. My stepmother's tried to trace it. She's really into genealogy. And I think we've gone back quite a few generations and haven't found where the influence came. But obviously, if it's a Germanic name, they probably would have hid, you know, their German influences through the wars and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
They shied away of putting themselves forward. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
name. I've been spelling it for years, and that gets a bit tedious. But apart from that, it's quite easy. It's fine.
That's that's fascinating though, because you know it's one of those things. I grew up with a my father's American and my mum's English, and you know that I think from an early age I understood there was a difference. I told the story, and I'm sorry for anybody who's watching. It's going to skip the story, but I went to my mum. I was about 4 or something, and I apparently took this toy, you know, vehicle and said lorry to her, and then I turned to my dad and said truck. I wasn't very articulate, obviously, but but I'd noticed there was a difference between the two, which is really interesting, you know. And I've always been fascinated in you know, when people have that kind of, you know, that history, that different, you know, these lines, because they thread into places sometimes where, you know, I think that's why that program Who Do You Think You Are was so popular, wasn't it? Because, you know, you get these kind of stories that come from history, and it's just fascinating, isn't it?
It is. And just on the name side, I never, I mean, part of my story, I was brought up to be very independent and my own boss and make my own decisions. And holding on to my maiden name when I got
Yeah.
married was quite an important thing to me.
Right.
Holding part of my dad actually was quite important to me. So I double barreling to me didn't seem like a big deal
Yeah.
because it solved a problem that I had. But at the time, people were like, "Oh, why don't you just take your husband's name? That's what everyone else does." And I was like,
Right.
"Oh, no. I kind of want my own name. I've built that
Yeah.
over the years. I want to keep it."
It's
Maybe that's
funny that because yeah, it's funny because sometimes like kids they kind of have this way of seeing a clarity sometimes. And you know, I remember talking to my sons a few years ago and talking, you know, and saying, well, you know, traditionally when women get married, they stop using their own name and they take the husband's name. And they're like, why would they do that? That's just weird. You know, it's almost like this kind of, again, this innocent truth. You know what I mean? It's like, that's a strange way of organizing it.
it's not everywhere though. I mean, obviously in lots of countries they don't do that, or they might use both names.
Yeah,
Things so.
yeah. So Nicola, what do you, as I say, I don't know anything about you apart from the fact that Kerry thinks you're dynamic and brilliant. So what's your story? Give us a flavour of what Nicola's life is like, as much as you want to reveal. Whether you
So scary. So
yeah.
what do I like now? My life has changed quite dramatically over the last
Okay.
year, and it's still changing. So like I said, I was brought up to be very independent and taught, you know, the line was be the boss, not the worker, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And got married and had 2 fabulous kids who are now 15 and 12. Um, and I was living in Essex. And then about a
Okay.
year ago, the pressure of my job and various other things got to me, and I wanted to make more of a life that I wanted. I felt I'd
Yeah.
kind of doing all the things that were expected of me for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And it was all, you know, it wasn't becoming viable. So moved to the lovely Whitstable with my daughter, but not my son, who's taken his exams. So my life at the moment is actually quite, it can be quite tense because my son is in Essex taking his exams and doesn't want to live here. The daughter's here, and so there's lots of changes going on. But I think they're changes for the good, for the most of it. And I'm loving what I do now. I actually still have the job that was stressing me out, but it doesn't stress me out anymore because I made some good decisions.
Okay, interesting.
I'll still be part of that company that I helped build over 20 odd years. And then I'm building my current company, which is No Fluff, which I train people how to build their businesses and sell more.
Brilliant.
I'm into sales and I enjoy it and I'm good at it. So I get a lot of satisfaction and I'm doing a lot of learning, which is brilliant, actually, from tax returns through to marketing and meeting new people and networking and just learning generally. So I think my happy place is learning. So I get to do that every day, which is brilliant.
That's brilliant, and I will link, you know, any links that you've got to No Fluff, so we can link it to the interview when we put it, as long as it's okay to share it. We'll link it down the bottom so people can click on that, and you know, do have a look at Nicola's business. Can you speak? I mean, you don't have to go into detail, obviously, and whatever you want to speak about. But I'm just interested in the phrase that stood out for me was that expectation. You said. The expectations, and that's a really fascinating thing because I'm fascinated by the, stories are wonderful and powerful and we can express our what makes us unique, but they can also limit us. We can get trapped in stories of the past, you know what I mean? And it's fascinating to me to hear that and to hear people speak about their lives and and that exactly that kind of thing. Can you speak about that a little bit, those expectations that you mentioned?
That's fine. It's quite a personal thing. I think it's only something I've realized over the last few years that I was brought up again to be independent, quite feminist, strong-willed, and all of this. And I thought I could kind of have it all, and the career, and the kids, and the family, and that kind of thing. But actually, it's bloody exhausting, and no one ever tells you that. So I found the expectation really came from me, actually, rather than anyone else. I thought I should, do the career, and I was breadwinner and I was raising the kids and I was baking bloody cakes for the bake sale and trying to do their homework models with them and pack lunches and going
cover everything,
covering everything. And I travelled with work, so then I'd go from 5-star hotel networking with big cheeses and doing some great work, and then coming home and thinking and do the packed lunches for tomorrow. And it was I found that the expectation, I think, particularly that women place on themselves, is quite high. All men do too, but I found that I set my sights my levels very high, which was exhausting. And I wish I had known earlier that I didn't have to do it all. It was actually all a big con that you can have everything, because you don't have that many hours in the day. And I think perhaps people that say they do maybe don't. And I think
right.
Well, the whole life on Facebook thing, and I don't maybe a bit of a front. I think you've got to be realistic that actually you're going to mess up stuff with your kids and you have no idea what to do with teenagers, and sometimes you're at work and you're just doing your best at the end of the day. But if you're honest about it with yourself, I think that's what I've come to learn.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I spoke to a lady called Sally Marshall the other day, and she was really fascinating. She had a fascinating story, but it was that point of we kind of got to this point where we're like, it's so important for us to tell an honest story in a way, or tell our story as honestly as we can, because when we present that perfect image, it's kind of like other people are watching, isn't it? And I think she's been sharing her story and it's helped a lot of people because of the places she's been to and how it's affected her and how she's come through it. And it's kind of like, it only takes that to reach one person who's in the same position and say, you know what, wow, yeah, I'm like that. and actually that really speaks to me, and I can go forward, or I can, you can find some leverage from it, whatever it might be. And I think it's so important that we do that, and as you've just spoken so eloquently about it, and it's like, when we buy into those stories of perfection, or we can have it all, it's gonna, we put so much pressure on ourselves, I think, don't we?
Yes, and maybe people handle it better than I do, but I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't like baking cakes for cake sales and stuff, so I'm just not going to anymore.
You know what? It reminds me this is a little bit off tangent, but it reminds me a couple of years ago, I was doing the book Great Expectations in class, and I'd done it a few times before, and it's a great book. I love it. And but something just dawned on me. We were having this great exchange. There were about 3 or 4 of us that were kind of talking over this point, and it suddenly dawned on me that Pip, who goes from like an ordinary lad to gentle, he becomes a gentleman, but he kind of thinks about, prior to that happening, that whole Magwitch is his benefactor and kind of like pays for him to become a gentleman, but he thinks about it, and he thinks about what gentleman is going to be, and he has an idea of what it means. And what's really interesting is like I suddenly had this epiphany. It's like, wow, I don't know whether Dickens intended it, but it's almost like Dickens is writing about, it's almost as though when we go through life, we're born into a world that already exists, and the meanings of words are out there, and we kind of take them at face value, but it's almost like we have to kind of translate it into our own language. And I suddenly thought, wow, Pip has an idea that's been given to him of what a gentleman is. And then as you go through the book, you meet a character like Bentley Drummle, who's a gentleman, but he's a complete arsehole, you know what I mean? And he's just mean and horrible. And it's as though Pip has to work out that what he means by gentleman is something specific to him. You know what I mean? It has an attachment to the communal kind of meaning, but he's got to work it out for himself. And it's like, I was like, wow, that was just such a big thing for me in class. It was like, maybe that's what we do. We interpret, we have to kind of work out what those words that we're given mean to us. And then we have to kind of be true to that to a certain extent. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
It does make sense, but I think you learn this later in life. I think the expectations put on you when you're younger are huge, and you should do this, and this is what you're aiming for, and this is the path that you take, and it seems to, and it may be that the parent, for example, is accepting if the child says, I want to do something different, but the child has to be super strong to say, I want to do something different. It's not an expectation that they may be anything. The expectation is along one line, which is the norm, and they have to be pretty strong to stand out from that, I think.
Yeah. I'm going to have a little drink. And I just realised, as I'm picking this up,
you didn't make me a cup of coffee.
I didn't make you a cup of coffee, but I've also realised that every time I've done this, I've made sure I've had a really nice glass because I'm a grown up, and I just remembered that I got one of my one of my kids' beakers.
We all do it. No, it's fine.
I'm such an infant. As he knocks the camera over. So, after we've done a few minutes of conversation, what I've been doing is throwing some questions out, just to see where you go with them, really. And one of the questions that I'm really, really interested in, I always have been since I was a kid. I used to be confused when I was like in my late teens, when I started to become an adult, and I would, I went out to work when I was 16, and I was really shocked that there were a lot of unhappy people. I didn't understand why. To me, it was our world, and yet we had so many people that were unhappy doing jobs they didn't like, and I didn't understand it. And I'd say to my parents, like, why are we doing that when we're in charge? You know what I mean? It's so innocent. But in a way, as that's become more complicated through the years, it's kind of always stayed with me. It's like, and out of it, I think it's become an interest in how we flourish and how we really thrive. What is it when humans thrive? And it's obviously not a one-word answer, but what's your take on that, Nicola? Does that speak to you in that question in any way? What is it to flourish for you?
For me personally, you know what? It's kind of a daily thing. So what am I going to do today that's going to make me feel good? Gosh, I sound like some Spaces song, don't I? What was her name from the MP? Well, anyway, that's
what have you done to make you feel proud? Yeah, yeah.
I would think that I would stop, you see, once I've given a mic. I think that's where I am. I do have a long-term view, and I'm quite cautious with things like money because I'm conscious that I've got to support my kids and things like that. But to actually flourish is what I'm finding now. I don't think it's a one-word answer, as you say. I think it's a daily task. So do you go to bed at the end of the day and think, you know what, that wasn't a bad day, or even if it was a bad day, I did X, Y, and Z that actually wasn't too bad considering the day I've had, or tomorrow I'm going to try and do this to make it better, or I'm going to think about this, and for me that's flourishing. So I'm now doing things that make me happy pretty much every day. I still have to do rough stuff like dentist and whatever, but pretty much every day I'm doing something that focuses on the goals that I have. And then like I do in my job, I break them down into a daily task. What am I doing to reach that? And what am I doing to make sure what am I doing to make sure my loved ones are happy? Because then I can relax and
that's really that's really interesting. It's kind of like working with purpose, I suppose, and intention, isn't it? I suppose it's
yeah, it might not be for everyone. I'm a big believer in goals and targets. I don't think you should live by them, but I think they do give you a bit of direction. And you have to be flexible along the way because obviously things change. So as long as you embrace that. But I'm also from a nice middle class family with, and I've got property and things like that. So I've got behind me. So it's easier for me to say maybe I have the luxury of having choices every day. Probably easier for some people.
What's really interesting is when you kind of going through that day, but you were absolutely kind of real about it, because it's like it's not this kind of Shangri-La happy state you get into. It's maybe having an intention and a goal set, but in the peaks of troughs of real life. Kerry's brilliant because she kind of I'm pretty moody. I'm a bit of a like creative spirit, and I'm pretty up and down. And I'll say to her, I think a few weeks ago I said something. I was like, yeah, but I'm really pissed off, and she was brilliant. She was like, well, be pissed off at what did she say? Be pissed off at an 8. Don't be pissed off at a 3. Do you know what I mean?
Faking it.
Which I just thought, you know what I mean? She's like, you can be pissed off and still be okay. And I was like, wow. And I know that because she's been saying that for a long time, and she's very like that. I mean, she's when she's angry or something, she's still kind of thriving. It's hilarious with her.
Embrace.
But, yeah, totally. So. Yeah, I think that's a fascinating thing. It's one of those. It's a bit like one of those kind of philosophical, almost rhetorical questions that it's not really necessarily the answer you're looking for, but it's kind of like the spirit of how you answer it that's just interesting. Do you know what I mean? The other thing that I've been asking people is, Nicola, what are we doing here?
Fucking no. I have no idea. Sorry. Am I supposed to be all professional? I have absolutely no clue. What are we doing here as a human race? No idea. We're cocking it all up though, frankly, aren't we? So whatever we're supposed to do here, I don't think we're supposed to be shrinking the planet and heating it up and killing off our having things made of palm oil and stuff, but I don't think that's what we're supposed to be doing. Someone should be telling us. No one's holding us accountable, so we're just kind of carrying on. Sorry, I have absolutely no idea.
It's such a tonic, you know what, and it's just been so brilliant because that question's just been fantastic for different the different answers, and some people will genuinely consider it and try and answer it, and it's been there's so many things, and every time I ask it I think, God, I'm so glad someone's not asking it to me, because I'd probably one of those people that I'd start writing an essay about it or something, do you know what I mean, and think I have to solve it right now, do you know?
No, I think there's no I think if someone would have, if it was an obvious answer, someone would have answered it by now. That's a lot cleverer than I am. And therefore, so this is me being very no fluff and pragmatic. I'm not going to waste my time answering or trying to answer that question. No offense, not your question, the question.
No, I know what you mean. No, that's absolutely right.
On things that I have not necessarily control over, but my own life or people around me making change in different ways. You know, I'll do my cycling and do all my bits and bobs like that. That's for the planet and the human race. But I cannot change the entire human race, and I don't like Brexit, but there's very little I can do now I voted. So I'm not going to spend every day upset about it.
I think that's so interesting. You know, I've thought about this a lot over the last couple of years, and it's kind of like, and I'm really guilty of this because I want to save the world. You know, you know, it's kind of, you know, and Kerry's always saying, well, you're making a presumption that the world's totally broken and you have to save it. So, but I think it's one of those things where, you know, we do, there's a lot of people now thinking, you know, this is not right. But I think sometimes we think that we've got to change it. And actually, maybe we just have to do our little bit. You know what I mean? As you said, that daily kind of action.
I totally agree. And my way of changing it to something I think is right isn't necessarily going to be the right way for someone else. So who am I to change an entire world when there are so many different opinions and
that's right,
and that kind of thing. So I'll if I can change my small world for the better, that's a different thing. That's something I can get on with. And
it ripples out, doesn't it?
Well, hopefully it ripples out the whole butterfly. But, and as for, you know, the global troubles, I will support and do my bit, but I'm on a hiding nothing really if I think I can change the world. So I in people, but it's not something I can do.
I think you have to
myself.
Kerry says pick your own battles, you know what I mean? And it's kind of thing, and that's, I've struggled with that because that's kind of like I'll get distracted by, you know, the global arms trade or whatever it meant, and Kel will say, look, you know, you want, what you really are good at is harmonizing and that kind of thing, you know. And I know when I get into that mindset of like everything's fucked, you know, that doesn't help my kids. You know what I mean? My kids see a side of me then that is kind of angry and just upset, and it's kind of, that's not really who I'm not really helping the world by that. I'm just kind of you know, just being an angry person then. And it's kind of like, and it's really over the last 2 or 3 years since my dad died, I've really gone through a change. And I think watching my dad die, it made me, I don't know, it just, and it's kind of coalesced over the last 3 or 4 or 5 months, and I've started thinking about stories and storytelling and the things I got so wound up about. And I got to a point, I was like, am I going to spend, you know, I'm 50 in January and I might have 20 years, I might only have a week, but, you know, let's say you might have 20 years if you're lucky or whatever it might be. Am I going to spend the rest of my time telling bad stories? Do I want to keep doing that? Or do I want to just start telling some good stories? You know what I mean? And that's what partly this project is all about.
Well,
can I just carry on?
No, I say that's a good thing to do. I think being positive, we were saying earlier about being positive creates more positivity around you, and misery loves company. I do think positive attracts positive, and negative attracts negative, which obviously goes against the grain. But the more that you can get good stories out of people and do what you're doing, the better the little bit of your world will be. I think that's a great thing.
Right. Can I just also just add there that you know, if anybody needs some help with their business, just rewind this video. You don't rewind it, God, that dates me, doesn't it? And click back, click back about 4 minutes, and just check out Nicola's answer to my question, what are we doing here? And if there's ever been a no fluff answer, you know what I mean? Talk about practice what you preach. Listen, this woman is going to help your business. If you're a bit fluffy, you need to speak to this lady because she's going to sort you out.
And if you're ready to listen. Sorry.
You know what? I come up with like weird things that I just think are fun. And I suppose it's because I suppose partly some of the things I think is a lot of the time when we talk, we're partly telling our own story to ourselves. You know what I mean? We're partly telling our story. We want to be listened to. We want to be kind of part of group, I suppose. And I suppose the questions I ask are probably questions that I've tried to ask myself, or I've grappled with myself. And I've spent a lot of time thinking, in my darker days, about the past and how I missed chances to do things and everything. So this question, even though it's a kind of really simplistic, basic one, it comes out of that I have dwelt on the past a lot at times. And wanted this scenario. So Nicola, I've got here, with the coffee that I didn't bring you earlier, I've got a little time machine, and you can borrow it for a journey to go and see your younger self. You got 5 minutes. What are you going to say to her?
Ooh, only 5 minutes. I always talk for long.
Yeah, you got to be it's got to be clarity. Yeah, no fluff.
I think I would say to put my own needs first sometimes. So for a good chunk of time, maybe 15 years, I was busy keeping the wheels turning, and I would say,
Wow.
You don't keep all of those wheels turning.
Yeah.
Choose 2 wheels and keep those turning well, right. And that's enough. I would also tell myself I have the power to do pretty much anything I want to do, and it will be okay. I like the kind of it will be okay.
Yeah,
to get clear on what you want. So
yeah.
I ever really considered what I wanted. I was
Right.
too busy to juggle everything. So I think that's probably what I would say.
I love
and
it.
Also, don't bother wearing heels. That would probably be the other thing I'd say, because they hurt. And 5'8", I don't need them. They hurt, and I look stupid when I wear them. So that would probably be the other thing. I wouldn't buy any heels. It's a bit fluffy, I realise.
That is a brilliant way. I just think that's, what, I can imagine there are a lot of women, hopefully some people will watch this, but I can imagine there'll be people nodding away going, yes, that's absolutely true. That's brilliant.
But not if you've got to walk. You probably know that, Frank, I'm sure.
Funnily enough, about, when was it? I've done a bit of Amdram, and about 4 years ago, I did this play over in Herne Bay Little Theatre, which is so delightful. And the director, David Kemp, who's a fantastic guy, he'd obviously read it, and he was like, you should play this tramp. He's fantastic. It was a tramp, and typecast or what, but so I had to play a tramp, and he had to do loads of different characters. It was a really sweet little play, and the character had to do loads of, so he said, it's fantastic, you get to do loads of different accents, you do different costumes, brilliant, you'll love it. And he totally sold me on it. I said, okay, I agreed, fantastic. He gave me the script, I went back, and I phoned him up and I said, hold on a second, on page 60, I have to be an air hostess.
I love that.
Oh my God, this play, right, for anybody that's watching, it's called Sorry I Love You. It's such a sweet play. It's by John Goodborough. I can't remember the guy's name. I'm sorry, John. It's a really delightful play, but I had to do the whole air hostess bit. I had to put the whole freaking thing on and high heels. And honestly, it defies logic. I do not know how it's possible that women actually... I've seen women run in heels, right? It's impossible. How could you do that? When they do Strictly... I
don't know how they do it.
When they do Strictly and everything, and you go, well, hold on a second, she's doing all those moves, but she's got these freaking 4-foot heels on.
They not break their legs. I don't understand it.
All the sympathy, all the empathy was there when I had to do this for 4 or 5 nights in a row walking on. I tell you what, though, doing a comedy was one of the best things I've ever done. It was really, really funny, because it was kind of quite a way through the play, and then I'd walk out, and oh my God, having 100 people just absolutely kidding themselves was hilarious. So listen, Nicola, thank you so much. That's all right. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really lovely to talk to you, and I hope we've shared a little of some listen to Nicola's cones of wisdom there, and I hope with some really cool takeaways from that. Thank you, Nicola. I really appreciate it.
Oh, very welcome. It was lots of fun.
Great. Thanks very much.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye.